It's not often that I cry when watching, reading, or playing something. One Piece, Amphibia, Xenoblade, Avatar The Last Airbender, Fruits Basket, etc. are some of the only pieces of media that have successfully managed to rip tears from my eyes. Usually they manage to get me to cry over the death of a beloved character, or the overwhelming release of emotion that comes with a major upset in the story, or even just two characters parting ways at the very end. But only one narrative has managed to get me to cry over the death of a villain. I've read, watched, and played through countless pieces of media with sympathetic villains, but none quite like Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, a manga written and drawn by Koyuharu Gotoge, which was made to be a different kind of battle shonen that still has many of the tropes that shonen battle fans love about it, but in a very different package. For one thing, it's quite short compared to its contemporaries. Many manga, particularly shonen manga, just seem to go on forever. Some even continue on past where the author wanted to stop. While there are cases in which a longer length can lead to good things, possibly because the mangaka planned it that way, most of the time it leads to a serious decline in the quality of the story, because the executives know the audience doesn't care that much after a point, and the series quickly becomes intimidating to newcomers who probably don't want to watch or read even the good parts. But not every manga, or indeed every shonen manga, needs several hundred chapters to tell its whole story. One example is Full Metal Alchemist, which I talked about before. Demon Slayer is a similar case, just much more recent and is also by a woman. So, what even is this story? What is it about? Well, it starts with series protagonist Tanjiro Kamado, a young man living in ancient Japan, returning home from a trip only to find his entire family has been killed by demons, save for only one of his sisters, Nezuko. He trudges through the snowy wilderness, desperately looking for a way to save her, and I don't mean save her from dying, save her from becoming a murderous monster, because the attack didn't just kill Tanjiro's family, it also turned his only remaining family member into a demon. Nezuko now has a powerful desire to feed on human flesh, and a demon slayer shows up to kill her. After witnessing Tanjiro's resolve, however, he reconsiders and decides to open the boy up to the possibility that he might be able to turn Nezuko back into a human. To do this, Tanjiro needs to join the Demon Slayer Corps, so he can protect the world from demons, protect Nezuko from other humans who might try to kill her, and find the demon who turned her, Kibutsuji Muzan. Tanjiro goes through some intense training for both his mind and his body, and he learns how to breathe well enough so that he can slice a boulder in half, run super fast, and develop a superhuman sense of the flow of battle. Better breathing to fight supernatural monsters. Why does that sound so familiar? Taking a closer look at our protagonist, Tanjiro is one of my all-time favorite shonen protagonists, and even just anime characters in general. No matter the opposition he faces, or how much he's plagued by his fears, he never wavers in his determination to protect the innocent, especially his friends and family. Much like Deku, Tanjiro wears his heart on his sleeve, and it shows. He cries a lot, and I mean a lot, but he's also wonderfully kind even to his enemies, even after all the harm they have caused or the people they have killed. He still sees them as living beings, not too different from his sister. While he does have to end them for the sake of protecting their potential future victims, he'll often do what he can to empathize with them and even comfort them in their final moments, which is in pretty harsh contrast to how fucking dark and depressing this world can be. Most of the time when Tanjiro goes to slay a demon, the demon has already killed tons of people, leaving many families in worse shape than even Tanjiro's is at the beginning of the story. Loved ones who will never come home, countless words left unsaid, lives and relationships left unlived, and the story always takes the time to acknowledge the tragedy of that. These people may be dead, but you can always do your best to do right by them and honor their memory, and to protect what you still have, and that is what Tanjiro does, no matter how bad things get. He occasionally gets in way over his head, or comes across too many demons for him to fight by himself. Fortunately, whenever that does happen, he isn't alone. Demon Slayer has a mostly rotating supporting cast of characters, switching them out from arc to arc, but there are a few companions who stick with Tanjiro to the bitter end. First of the recurring supporting characters is obviously Nezuko. Due to her demon nature, she has to wear a bamboo muzzle to prevent herself from being too tempted to eat human flesh, so she can't talk for most of the anime, but when she does act, it's usually at a risk. She makes choices independent of what Tanjiro asks or even wants her to do sometimes, if she thinks it's the right move. She's fairly simple, but over the course of the series, and especially towards the end, she starts taking control of her life back in a really powerful way. And that's about as much as I can say without spoiling too much more. Relatively early in the series, the Kabuto siblings also pick up 2 more swordsmen who help them on their journey. First is Zenitsu Agasuma. Zenitsu is the obligatory pervert character for this series, as he has a blatant crush on Nezuko as soon as he sees her. But unlike Mineta or Sanji, he never becomes too insufferable. He's been trained in the ways of the blade, but he's a huge coward and he hates himself for it. But when the chips are down, he can fight, and fight well. Even Tanjiro takes a pointer from him in a later arc. His character arc is a bit slow burn, and is just about him gaining the confidence to help against the demons, but when he's not doing that or fawning after Nezuko, he is a pretty good comic relief. Rounding out our central team, Inosuke Hashibira. Inosuke is honestly the opposite of Zenitsu in that he's extremely confident and often doesn't display enough humanity to those around him, having been raised by boars. He often rushes into things against the better judgment of his friends and peers, but also like Zenitsu, he grows over time, slowly learning to work with his human friends and stand by them when they need it, even if he never lets go of the bestial upbringing with twin serrated swords and that boar mask. Relatively early in the series, we're also introduced to the Hashira, the best of the best in the Demon Slayer Corps. In any other story, they would be side characters who show up from time to time, but maybe they get some good development. In this series, however, they effectively get to be secondary protagonists for an arc. Some of them, I'd even say many of them, are fully fleshed out characters, even more so than Zenitsu or Inosuke. Even if they only get a few chapters to be fleshed out, Gotoge-sensei often imbues them with a full backstory and motivations to make them memorable. It's similar to how One Piece makes you care about each of the Straw Hats, come to think of it. The powers in this series, at least those used by the heroes, are simple and shallow compared to other shonen power systems, as it's literally just sword fighting with elemental visual motifs, but Gotoge-sensei gets a lot of mileage out of that thanks to the different ways the characters move, and how intense and dynamic the fights get. The action in Demon Slayer is honestly on the same caliber as My Hero Academia or Full Metal Alchemist, and that's not considering the powers used by the demons. Demons can effectively do anything depending on their level of power, ranging from hiding in the ground, to trapping you in dreams, to bending space and time. Fights in this series tend to be an uphill battle for the heroes, whose only edge is their increased strength, speed, and skill, but there is always a path to victory, as if a demon is ever brought into the sunlight, they will disintegrate, or if their head is ever separated from their neck, or if they are ever inflicted with a specially made poison, they can die. Getting there is an intense struggle, and preparing for these encounters is a process of intense training, but it makes every victory feel like a massive payoff. Unfortunately, that brings me to my biggest complaint about the series. You see, Gotoge-sensei did introduce more powerful villains as the series went on. On paper, that's a perfectly fine way to raise the stakes. The problem I have is that she also made the villains way harder to kill, in that they kept pulling a, JK, my neck is in a different place, or actually, I'm way harder to decapitate, with the villains as the series went on. Combine this with how long the battles got, and I started to tune out with some of the later arcs, as every time Tanjiro would come close to slaying them, they would pull a switcheroo and escape death somehow for I don't know how many more chapters. The good news is it doesn't feel too long when we get to the final arc. Speaking of which, the final arc in this series that recently got animated is awesome. We get great moments for more of the Hashira, more minor antagonists revealed, answers to many questions about the lore and the origin of the Demon Slayer Corps, and of course, Tanjiro's final clash with Muzan. It's dramatic, long, and has a lot of hardship experienced by the characters, but when the sun finally rises on their victory, it feels good. and it's followed by one hell of a bittersweet, yet ultimately heartwarming ending. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, although it's a fair bit shorter and simpler than other battle shonens I've covered on this channel, is still crafted with as much love and skill as any of them. Its story structure can feel a little awkward at times when confined to 200 chapters, but make no mistake, it's just as complete a story packed with action and lovable characters as manga many times its length. Short but sweet might be the best way I can describe it. My own time with it may not have been long, but it's an experience I'll never forget. I'm Kylan Mythos, and I'll see you all next time.